Welcome to Show Studio. It's a sad day in some ways because it's the last day of London Fashion Week and it's also our penultimate live panel discussion for the London shows. But it's also a good day because we're going to be discussing Simone Rocha, who's undoubtedly one of the sort of great stars of London Fashion Week. Such a lovely girl, and she always does absolutely amazing collections, and hopefully this season will be exactly as brilliant as usual. Before we begin though, dissecting her work and discussing what makes her so great, I'll let my wonderful set of panellists introduce themselves, starting with you, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Thawley. I'm the editor of A Magazine Curated By in Paris.
Hi, I'm Bertie. I'm a freelance fashion journalist.
I'm Lucy. I'm director of Claire de Rouen Books.
I'm Caroline, and I'm creative director at Brown's in South Molton Street.
I'm Christie Fels, and I'm head of Womenswear at Hostem.
So, to kick things off, what makes Simone so great? Because she's got so much buzz around her, everyone thinks she's incredible. Why is she so brilliant? Caroline, I'll go to you first because I know you stock her at Brown's. I'm sorry to be so cruel, but what makes her so brilliant?
I think she has this sort of mix of being brave and also her feet. You really feel with her design, as well as seeing her as knowing her as a person, that her feet are very firmly fixed on the ground. And I think that combination of understanding that her clothes need to be wearable, at the same time she is incredibly experimental and brave in the fabrics that she uses, and her whole approach to her collections. They have a youthfulness and an energy and a sense of joy about them that I think everybody, whether you can wear them or not, cannot deny that. I think she's very special.
She is very special. You're nodding away, Bertie, do you agree?
Yeah, I love her. I think she's absolutely brilliant. I think she designs for a whole range of girls and women. It's very wearable, even though it's really intricate and beautiful and just really fresh and exciting. Great.
I want to talk a little bit about the kind of the type of fashion that she represents, because it's very sort of textured. It's very sort of about this kind of handcrafted thing, and I think that felt really fresh when she came along. Dan, talk to me a little bit about that and what makes her... You always look really scared when I go.
No. I mean, I think that's one thing that's really interesting about Simone is the way that she is very, very recognising of her own heritage and British fashion as having tradition, and I think she mixes that with her modern touch in such a nice way. And so she does use fabrics that have a history in menswear, and she uses things like lace, but she puts it up against plastic and all these kind of coated fabrics that we've known her to use as well, using things in very unexpected colours. And I wouldn't go as far to say as she is so artisanal in her approach as opposed to other London designers, which are, really personally hands-on in crafting things and to the bone. But I think what she does is she applies those ideas to, as Caroline said, pieces that are very accessible for a woman to wear.
I think that's also what's made her aesthetic so identifiable. I mean, she's only 5 seasons in, which is quite, she's quite young, she's 27. And I know that she, is from a very young age, she was hand crocheting and knitting, and so she has an understanding of these traditional techniques, but then uses, fabrics like PVC and plastic. And it's the juxtaposition of these two things that make her pieces so identifiable as Simone Rocha, and I think that it's an amazing achievement. And of course, like the quality and the execution of it is perfect thanks to her training. So I think that the use of her fabrications and the understanding of the handcraft and the importance of quality just makes her stand out, especially in London.
The other thing that sort of runs alongside that is a kind of very strong visual element. I always feel immediately that I can sense the shapes really quickly, and so I think that's quite unusual, the kind of combination of very involved use of material, but also and texture, but also a kind of sense of an image of
and
dress
from a
as
distance
an
her
image.
pieces look simple, but it's really on close inspection that you realize how much work goes into the textiles themselves and the fabrication. But you're right, the silhouettes are also so strong in themselves. She doesn't just rely on the fabrics that she's using and the techniques.
And you hinted at this when you said that's quite rare, especially in a young designer, to have such a sort of a clear, unique point of view. You know, sometimes there's a lot of noise that goes on around Fashion Week, and it can be quite hard to sort of slice through that with something that's really precise and clear. Do you think that's one of her strengths, just having a very sort of, I guess, yeah, a very clear, very firm, authentic point of view? Because that can be missing in other young designers.
I often feel quite let down when you see such a brilliant collection by somebody and then you find out that they're actually a complete pig. And it does happen. And I think Simone's like the absolute antithesis of that. You know, she's like a lovely girl. You can tell just from looking at her. She smiles, she's kind, she's accessible, she gives great interviews, and you can see it in her clothes. She really loves designing and she loves who she's designing for, and that's brilliant, I think.
Well, Simone's really grown up with the culture though, because of her father designing, and also I think the thing that also really sets her work apart from her father's work, and I mean there are many things, but one thing that's really important with her is the way that she works so closely with her mother. And I think that's it's really special relationship, and you can see the way that she has grown up with a very strong visual culture from Ireland, from the UK in general, and her mother is one of those people that has brought that to her from an early age. And I think that gives that girly kind of very, very feminine vibe to what she does, but it also has an edge.
That family-run business is also, it's such a likeable narrative to have. You know, her brother does the sound for her shows. That I don't think that she's directly involved with her father in terms of her business, but of course growing up around it must have had an influence. But you know, her mother overseeing production and distribution, I just think it's such a nice narrative. You want to like her, you want to like the brand, because you know she, and you do, and I do,
because the clothes are great.
You
know, they really are great, and it's certainly what she will have learnt just by mere absorption of growing up around her father's business, who was a very, very well respected and hugely talented designer in his own right. You will just absorb, you know, those things, the things not to do and how to do them well. So I'm not saying she has, that's incredibly empowering and helpful. And as long as she, you know, and I'm sure you could see she's taken all that technical and practical advice, because when you're actually designing, the steps from A to Z are so many, and there's such disciplines at every single stage, and for a lot of our young designers, they're learning them as they go along, and of course she is as well. But to have such a practical mentor, you know, in your family is wonderful and helpful, and we can see.
But it's a credit to her sort of likability as a person, I think, as well, that that's never caused anyone to sort of think that she's had an unfair leg up. You know, people are so sure that, you know, she is completely deserved of her spot on Fashion Week, that she's toiled in the way that all young designers have to, and I think that is a real credit to her, because it would be very easy for that narrative that you mentioned, Christie, to go the other way and people to think it was kind of
I think that she's taken the traditional path, though, of any, you know, successful London brand. She's got the MA at Central St Martin's, and then Fashion East, New Gen, collaborating with Topshop. It's the sort of, it's proof that that recipe can work. And she's kind of done all the steps that any designer would who has the talent. It's not that she went from A to Z suddenly and now she's just there from nowhere.
And at the same time, I think she has the stores backing her up from before the press did, which I think is actually quite a, it's not at all unique, but it's a quite important way of actually establishing a brand. It's not to necessarily just rely on the hype of a couple of journalists and editorials and things, but it's actually to have the stores coming to you, which they did before actually she was sort of queened in London. So but I guess, Caroline, you're one that's had her for quite a few seasons now. What are the kind of pieces and things that you guys buy and find are so successful?
Well, this season everything we've bought has been successful, and that wonderful neoprene story with the big pearls has been really strong, and everything has actually that we've had has flown out. It's flown out, and we're putting in reorders. And what's also exciting about her, and as an older person in fashion, it's ageless, really. I mean,
do you see that in the shopper? Is it
yes, you do. It's a type of woman that goes for her, regardless of her age. It's really about her background, and she's a self-aware woman, knows what suits her, and is also will push it, want to have something a little bit different, but and Simone does that. I've seen, you know, lovely girls, you know, gorgeous leggy girls in their 20s looking amazing, and also women in their 40s looking incredibly elegant in her clothes, and it's how you style them as well. And there's a lot of flexibility and versatility in the way you can wear her clothes, and I think that is also one of the elements for a successful brand.
I was at a cocktail at your store last night, actually, and a friend of mine, she was in one of the black dresses from the collection with the pearls, and she just wore it with a pair of basic flat boots, and she looked fantastic.
Gorgeous. You don't need anything else. It's just really special.
I think it's a deceivingly young aesthetic, because when you see it for the first time in the shows, you know, on a skinny girl, and it looks like difficult. They look difficult to wear, those pieces, but actually they're not. And I don't think, you know, she's not really designing for a little lollipop. I think that it's, well, you know, they're equally as beautiful on all sized women.
She cuts generously.
Yeah.
But it's very sympathetic design, I think, which is something that you don't often see, especially in a young designer, to have that sort of awareness to do something that is ageless and yeah, is sympathetic to the female body. I think it can be easy to forget that when you're trying to make a statement, and that's one of Simone's strengths, I think, is being very open-minded when it comes to who's going to wear her pieces. And maybe this goes back to what we were saying about working with her father. She's probably picked up on that kind of that basic awareness of fashion needing to be worn, which I think can be forgotten often with younger designers.
But
So I think it's what she really wants.
Yeah,
I feel
definitely.
that's really an important, you know, one of the important things for her on her list.
So it completely complements her aesthetic too, because she does this amazing sort of geek chic thing so well. These nerdy designs, the big skirt, the straight shirts, all that kind of thing.
One thing I want to pick up on a little bit, because it looks like the show's about to start, but we've talked about her sort of her aesthetic very much, and we've talked about her skill with fabrications and with sort of finishes, but I'd like to talk a little bit about, I always ask you this, Lucy, I'm going to our book correspondent, but she's, as much as her being sort of very great with the fabrics and with the actual craft of it, she's incredibly sort of interesting when it comes to her research and her references. It's not actually all about the kind of the aesthetic. For a lot of it is the thought processes that go behind it. You know, she's referenced some amazingly diverse things. She comes into the shop, doesn't she, and uses the book.
Yeah. She does occasionally. Yeah, she does. Yeah, I mean, I think it seems that there's a kind of new interest in storytelling and narrative, which I really like, and also feels appropriate for autumn, you know, this kind of time when you start spending more time indoors and reading tales. I read that this show, she's been reading Sylvia Plath. Does anyone else?
I saw that on the screen
Sort
a
of-
minute ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's very well read, and I
sort
think
of
in
a-
interviews that really comes out,
definitely.
and she's also very actively looking out at exhibitions, and art and music have been influencing her from a very young age as well.
Here we go. Can you turn it down just a wee bit? Thank you. So the music is Cloud Castle Lake, which is obviously her brother that will have done it, who I've not heard of because I'm not
That's
cool.
that's a story by Nabokov.
Oh really?
Yeah, I don't know if that's...
I'm not sure if he did do the sound for this show, but I know in the past he has.
Yeah, he's done it.
Yeah.
Quite a fearsome character this season, I love that.
Quite threatening,
Yeah.
but it's still so feminine, isn't it?
Well, she's talked on her show notes about Elizabethan, young and rebellious, which I think is quite a fun mix. That's something really regal, but really,
That's amazing, isn't it?
yeah, that's beautiful.
Oh my god, that is
Her
brilliant,
shoes have
isn't it?
also
Yeah.
always been such
Yeah,
a
the
cult.
shoes are so
haven't they?
great.
Well, that's one thing I want to talk about, because actually I think it's very easy to forget that a lot of young designers don't work well with accessories. You know, someone like Christopher Kane didn't do a bag for absolutely ages. No one really is known for their shoes, but Simone, almost from the first season, bags and shoes have been such a huge part of her repertoire, and I think that's a real credit to her as well.
Yeah, I knew about her shoes before I even paid
So,
attention
yeah,
to
she
her.
could easily be a
The
standalone
Tomblow
footwear
sole that she
designer.
did, the Perspex sole.
Yeah.
Those.
Yeah.
them?
They feel kind of.
They're so hard to walk in.
They're not hard to walk in at all, they're just incredibly heavy.
Yeah, okay.
And I've like severely cut
I've
my
tried.
ankle because I'm very clumsy. And they're very heavy, so if you pick up one foot and you're...
No running, basically.
Yeah, and you hit your ankle with them. But they're very comfy.
I think the thing about the accessories with Simone is they feel very much, she has a kind of holistic approach to the, so it doesn't feel like an afterthought, or it feels, it's part of the
And she keeps
the look
variety
very
as well.
much.
She keeps developing them. She keeps that idea of it extends it so much further each time. Into flats, into sandals, into brogues. She's been everywhere, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she did this show, she did Simone last season too.
I love this play that she's done on the hips, you know, that very kind of like a Tudor dress. It actually looks incredibly modern. It's quite a new shape. You don't see that kind of accentuated.
Ben and Ed have done those kind of things before as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it could almost be costumey, but then the length and the cut does
And this
make
tank
it quite
top
wearable.
kind of neckline.
Are you enjoying it, Caroline? You look very happy to see it come
Yes,
up.
lovely.
It's the same again with the styling too, like that hair is obviously so intricate, but then
Tribal.
it's just been sort of mussed a bit. It looks real, like someone would actually wear that, run for the bus.
It's quite interesting to see that she stepped away from the sort of fluoros and the brighter colours. And
Yeah.
it's 2 seasons in a row now that she's showing more monochrome collections, which I think is great. Obviously, it's even more accessible for a larger audience.
One thing I really like with
lovely
Simone is she repeats
love it.
herself so much, but in a really great way. You know, you feel like she's growing. It doesn't feel like she's kind of...
Yeah, I mean this couldn't be anyone else, could it? You
No.
know.
Not to say she doesn't have her
Lovely
references,
silhouette.
you know, other designers, which I think she does.
She has a real gift to use transparency in a really elegant way, I think.
Yeah.
Finally, and it feels quite wintry, which a lot of people haven't.
It's been a light season, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
it's been really light, and this you suddenly are like,
Just
okay,
like
now
chuck
I
a big
want
coat
winter to
over a
come.
silk dress
Yeah.
and there you go.
Yeah. But no, you can tell she's designing for like the dark days.
But I also like the approach where a coat becomes its dress-like, you know, and it's sort of, so it doesn't dumb things down. It's kind of
And I like that she doesn't,
Joyful.
you know, everyone else is doing kind of layering, and I like with her, it's almost like you can buy it, as you said, your friend was wearing last night, you can buy one piece, and
Yeah,
it's an outfit in
definitely,
itself, you know,
definitely.
you're done.
Oh, that's
I like
so
the fact that
amazing.
it's very clean, really. They're just very definite, strong shapes, whether they're the simple ones or whether they've got the volume. This is it. Yeah.
Whoa. I like how the pearls have
Gorgeous
come
pearl.
again, except in silver and gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's such a smart point that it looks so clean, when actually when you think she's doing fur and embellishment and
Yeah,
lace and
metallics.
see-through, you know, it could look so fussy, but it always looks really, there's such a purity to it.
I think it's also down to really good styling. They haven't tried to overdress. I mean, you can imagine this layered up could be a little bit scary, but
That's
I think
beautiful.
it's styled
Beautiful,
well.
that pale pink.
Have there been any bags?
really.
Am I being an
Yes,
idiot?
yeah, she
Yeah,
has
there've been
little
some clutches.
frame purses and
Oh, I love that. That's new for her as to do something so. I love the kind of granny thing she does. I think
yeah,
it's
exactly.
so
She's
great.
very good at it.
So cool.
The golden foreheads are very beautiful too.
Yeah, really beautiful. It just always feels really modern, and I think it's always hard to pinpoint what that means, but it's interesting what you were saying, Christie, about her moving away from the neons, but to see her do kind of a tartan and a red, that feels very fresh for her. You know, we saw that lovely green last time.
What are
It
we
is
calling that colour?
tribal.
Is it raspberry?
What are we calling it? Could go with raspberry, cherry.
Cherry.
Cherry, perhaps. It looks like flocking, or perhaps, or knitwear. It's,
It does, doesn't it? That's so beautiful. I think this is an incredibly confident collection. You know, to do something so kind of, it's incredibly British, you know, like Queen Elizabeth, the Tudors, Charter, very...
There's so many layers as well to the fabrication.
I wonder if she'll bring out some brides now, because she
I
had
think
these
those are the brides.
Yeah, I
those
think
brides.
those are the brides.
Yeah. Well, she did the same, wasn't it like 2 or 3 girls in that colour clothes?
And
the
they had
last
the
show?
The
veils.
The veils.
Oh, that was lovely.
It was really
Bravo.
lovely.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
good.
I kind of just started shopping halfway through. I want to see the walkthrough, I want to see it again. Good music as well.
Very strong.
Yeah, I think they are her brides. It's kind of an Elizabeth,
Yeah.
a Tudor bride.
Is that Radiohead over the top? Perhaps.
Sounds like it.
It's a nice mix of lengths as well. When it first came out, I thought it was very, very short, but actually to see some of the pants and the longer skirts, that's really great. Because it goes back to that age thing we were talking about before.
I'm quite a fan of this strange red and pink being posed next to each other. I think they're quite difficult, but they kind of work. If it's the right shades. I like the shaved head model too. She's been in a few
she's
shows.
awesome.
Yeah.
She's great.
But the girls she uses are always amazing. They're really diverse, but they always look really, really great. You know, it's lots of different ideas of beauty that she puts across. This snake skin is really
yellow's
great
nice.
as well.
Something quite tribal about the music and the way
The hair
it
and
remind
the
me of the sadhus
Yeah.
in India. Their head.
Oh. I love her. I just think she's such a cool girl. I think that was quite fearsome. You said tribal, but it had a real kind of a strength to it, didn't it? It was kind of
very strong.
Yeah,
very strong. Very no fuss. This is it. This is me.
It was almost Highland, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With the tartan particularly, but even before the tartan it felt very...
Yeah, a sense of clan, the clan, a kind of inner strength.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you
What
can
should-
see very controlled as well with her
Yeah.
detailing, and it's just
you always feel like she knows when to stop, which I think is a skill that
she really
rare
understands.
in a designer.
Yeah, she's really understands less is more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's wonderful. She will do very well with this collection.
You're happy already.
I'm very happy already.
And it's often even better when to touch and
Exactly, I
to
can't
see it
wait
up close.
actually to go to the showroom and
See
see
it up
them. I
close.
love to. For me, that's always what I love doing even more than the shows. It's actually
Indeed.
handling them, see how they handle. It's very important.
And it must be really nice to do that with a designer where you know that actually up close it's going to be even better. There's not that thing of, oh, we're going to turn it inside out, it's going to be terribly made, you know, with somebody, it's going to be sort of a second treat.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of, sorry to interrupt you, elements that remind me of Medium Kirchhoff's last season with the snakeskin, the red and the embellishments. It's quite reminiscent of what they showed last season.
I quite like the shoulder silhouette of this
drop
shoulder and then the
shoulder.
ruffle coming out
Yeah.
mid bicep.
But I like the way she works with the reference because it feels like she'll take something and she'll really will push it and she'll take it into quite an extreme level, like all of these really Tudor shapes, you know, that really reminiscent of, you know, Tudor dress and off the shoulder, those hips that are accentuated, those kind of drop sleeves that we reference. You know, but it never feels costuming, it never feels kind of gimmicky at all, but it does feel like she's really explored an idea and she's really sort of poured through references.
Minimalist Tudor?
Minimal Tudor. Androgynous Tudor.
Is possible?
Oh dear. No, I think it's interesting that point that you make about medium Kirchhoff though, because with her it feels like there are a lot of similarities between the work, you know, the kind of the embellishment, the slightly costumey feel, but that there's such different women. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
That's
to
it
see
for
in
sure.
London.
She's a huge fan of comm as well, which she'll readily admit, and you see certain elements of the deconstruction coming through there too.
It's interesting because so many times I was watching this and I wanted to refer to to comm because early collections. There are things there that I've said it's like the feminine side of Ray.
That's it. It injects a softness that she certainly does not want to bring to Comme des Garçons.
Which she's perfectly capable of doing when she does want to. But
it's interesting with something because it doesn't feel familiar ever, really. It always feels like there's something new.
It's her. It's great.
These glossy textures are something that we've seen quite a bit this week as well. Erdem as well was doing this kind of croc stamped, very liquid PVC, and Christopher Kane had all that sort of garbage bag textures, and even at Toga as well. So that's definitely.
Don't know how that will feel on the on the skin. I think you need that's why as a buyer it's really important to actually handle it, because some fabrics look wonderful, but if they make you perspire or your skin can't breathe, there's
But I wonder, because a lot of people are being quite smart with double facing these days, so perhaps that could be
I'm sure they're taking
a way of.
I think she does always definitely think about comfort completely.
It's amazing how she can use all these ruffles and in her dresses, but it doesn't feel overtly feminine. It doesn't feel girly or frilly.
Or too much.
No, not at all. It's quite strong. I think even maybe Medium Kirchhoff is more feminine.
Definitely.
But they go for.
Yeah.
But
I think her stuff used to feel more girly. Yeah, it feels. I think it grows up each season, but you're right. Even last season when she did those huge veils and all the pearls, it still didn't feel girly.
It felt quite wearable.
Even some of these could be incredibly cool office or cocktail wear as well. I mean, from office to cocktail.
But it's to do with the placement of those details, because they're never quite in the way you'd expect them to be. If you were being really girly, you'd always put them in the centre, or it's almost like the shoulders just slip down a bit and you don't care. It's like,
like you've shrugged off
which
the
is so it's a kind of casualness to it too.
And it feels like they're clothes for girls to impress other girls that will be bought by girls. They're not clothes.
Are you saying they're not man catchers?
I don't think they're man catchers at all. I don't think Simone cares about that. She's too cool.
But it's cool to be sexy.
I reckon a lot of guys would like to see a girl in a sheer skirt.
Yeah, but they're sexy, but I don't think that's their intention. I don't think they're not sexy, but I think they're very much kind of.
I think they're quite fearsome. I think that is the word for this, isn't it? Because that can be everything. That can be sexy, that can be sporty, tribal, all of it.
And also the experience of wearing fabrics like this, which are kind of futuristic, is you do feel you're kind of aware of your body. I think that's kind of that's like, it also kept thinking of Blade Runner, this like woman dressed in plastic. Do you know that scene? And that feeling of kind of just almost alien quality, which is there in Elizabethan. There's that kind of sense of like some other force, like otherworldly. I always think that. How the rain, it was like the weather that helped us keep the Spanish away, and that's kind of elemental and like otherworldly, and I think that comes through.
Pagan.
Yeah.
It's interesting, we talked about this I think on the last panel, but this idea, one thing that's lovely with her clothes is that you said, you're aware that you're wearing them, and that there's a thing with a lot of what she does where her pieces will make you'll be very comfortable in them, but they'll make you stand slightly differently or be aware of space, especially like I'm wearing a Simone skirt today, and it makes you, because it's quite big, you're aware of yourself, but it's really comfortable, but you hold yourself differently and you move past other people differently because you're like, don't touch my skirt. But it's quite, and her shoes do that, they make you stand differently, and I think there's something really great in that, to be really aware of your clothes without them kind of, I'm explaining this really badly.
It's lovely. It's like it's not so much like you get dressed and forget about it. It's like they're actually sort of objects that you're living with. I think it's very beautiful.
Yeah, you have to. That sort of feeling is something I observe all the time in the wedding shop side of my business.
Oh, really?
When the girl puts on a particular dress by a particular designer, and when it matches, she just sort of goes. Something happens. She completely changes your posture and your self-awareness. It's a very interesting thing to observe, and it's true. Certain clothes and her clothes, they do that. I can see that.
Which is interesting, given that we were all saying how easy and effortless it feels, because it does feel like that, but it doesn't feel like you know, the models, they have this real, I know it's Elizabethan, but they have that something very regal about them. While their clothes are kind of falling off them or hanging off one shoulder, it doesn't feel like they're kind of completely at ease, but in a really great way. You know, they have this kind of real, they look really majestic in them, which I think is a really interesting divide to get. When are you going to pick her up at Hostum?
I am going to have a look at the collection tomorrow. But I think it's also really, it's not, I mean, obviously there are loads of designers that I love that, you know, we can't stock everything.
Definitely.
But I think that it's about right timing as well, and it's not just for us as a store, but it's for the designer as well. And I think designers who know what they're doing have an idea of where they want to be stocked and when, and you know, distribution is something that needs to be controlled. And I really like, you know, people to be aware of that kind of the importance of timing. You know, you don't want to over distribute too quickly, and she's available quite widely in London, so we don't want to take on someone at the wrong time when she, you know, there's she's available everywhere and it's oversaturated. So however, I mean, we're keeping the dialogue open. We really do. We love what she does. So
you're absolutely right, and often designers will over distribute too soon, and they do everyone a disservice, as you know, especially starting with themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Because when that happens, and you know, the sales go flat or they dip, then there's a panic, and it's very important for a designer growing at this as she is, that wherever she sells into, they sell through really well, so that you want to and are able to keep buying more. When they tend to oversaturate in one city, is, you know, especially today with the internet as well, where people are shopping globally, and you know, it's quite cutthroat globally, not just from shop to shop, but store to store, and site to site. If you're not careful, you do overexpose yourself, and you're not so desirable anymore.
It has to be quality, not quantity, doesn't it?
I think that's such an interesting point. It's so nice to have a buying perspective on something that we don't always get on the panel.
Could I pose a difficult question and ask you both, like, what are the things that have most attracted you out of the show from first glance, and what you're most interested in?
I think that's an awful question. And I'll tell you why. Because I really hate making an opinion based on seeing a show, because what you see in a showroom is so different to what comes down the runway. You know, the majority of the time there's triple the amount in a showroom. You know, with commercial pieces, it kind of explodes on itself, and you walk in and you think, I don't remember this from the show. And the other thing is what we were discussing earlier, how tactile her collections are. They're so different when up close. I mean, what I might like from a distance in a show, I might really dislike feeling it, as you were saying, and how that feels on. So I'm reserved to say anything, because I'm a big fan of trying things on in a showroom. A lot of things look great on models, and they're just not cut for someone of my height, or you know.
Which is when your average height. This is what most
average
women,
height.
You know, where most women are like all of us sitting around down here. We're not these gorgeous 6 foot beautiful models. I completely agree with you. Actually, just sitting here, and I know that when I go into the showroom, thankfully, it will narrow down, and they will be able to buy a collection, because there is so much here that I really think is wonderful, more than in many of the shows. In many of the shows I will look at, and yes, you can admire and the craftsmanship and the look, but actually how many pieces you feel you can sell are very different. Whereas I feel, just looking at this collection, it's a very strong collection.
Like everything.
I do.
Do you think she's getting to that point where people come into the store and they want to buy Simone, they know about her, she's a committed shopper in that sense, or do you think she's still attracting a shopper where they see a piece and then they try it on, they perhaps weren't aware of her, or does she have a definite sort of...
I think it's both. I think she definitely has a definite follower her who knows, and because she's very new still, so people are discovering her, you know, all the time, and I think, you know, collections like this, she'll have lots more people discovering her, for sure.
It's so angelic, these looks
These
with
are
the
so
golden headbands
Yeah.
and
beautiful in the evening. I mean, everything.
Her headpieces are always amazing. Have they ever been? I don't think you can ever actually buy
Yes,
them.
yes, you can.
Can you?
Yeah.
Where can you get them from?
I think opening ceremony I've been
Okay.
selling them in a few stores.
So
I've picked them
nice.
up, yeah.
And I love the cutout she did. I really like that when it came down the runway. It's kind
With
of
this hip slit.
just the little hip, cut out, which she did really nicely on the side of the skirts last season. So it's that sexy thing, like there's something really, really sort of attractive
But
about
she's
that.
also done one of those awkward slippers that we've been seeing a bit lately, like a sort of a frill around the edge or a flat sort of sweeping shoe.
But she does kind of play with that kind of
Yeah.
awkwardness, doesn't she? Something a bit clunky or a bit clumpy, and that's quite fun.
It's
too.
also a kind of, they're like sheepskin slippers you wear at home, so it's kind of like looking at that love of sheepskin that's going on, but in a kind of odd way. you
Yeah.
know?
Domestic.
Yeah, exactly. Comfortable, but not.
But her clothes, they
unusual.
never feel particularly, they do feel very homely. They don't feel urban. They feel very, some of the references we were talking about, they feel very rural and otherworldly. They don't feel like they're clothes born from kind of the streets of London. They feel very much like they're from something she saw when she grew up in Ireland, or from something.
Yeah,
They
you
still have a
don't-
grunginess.
She's not thinking about London it girls when she's designing them, is she?
No.
Which is quite nice.
I don't know. I think
look at
she's
those
a very
shoes.
sophisticated woman who, you know,
Definitely sophisticated.
will be wearing her clothes.
Oh, indeed.
And she is an urban woman. But where she gets her inspiration, but she's a pretty sophisticated girl.
I think what you meant is not
I mean,
in terms
not
of sophistication, but we're
sophisticated.
talking about more it's
Yeah.
not party girl necessarily, it's not socialite necessarily.
Yes.
In terms of that
I
side
understand
of
what you're
things.
saying. Yes.
Something
It's not-
deep about.
It's not about who's on her front row necessarily.
No, she's a woman who's wearing it because she feels great
That's
in
it.
it,
Yeah.
and
It's
it
more
feels right
personal.
for her. It is personal. She's not wearing it to show off to everybody
That's
else, but because she feels comfortable
Exactly.
in it, which actually has much more longevity than those dresses and outfits which are to wow.
Yeah.
Because you can only wow once, maybe
Well,
twice
that's
max.
the thing, yeah, you couldn't wear these forever.
I love that. That's a good takeaway. You can only wear once.
A third time in a different country.
That's so true. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point with her pieces. They're hard-working pieces, aren't they? Even though there's bits in there that are really sort of, some of these tartan pieces make a bit of a statement. A lot of the meat and potatoes of each collection is very much pieces that you can change around, dress in different ways, and that's really great. What would we like to see next from her then? I guess from what we're saying, just more of the same. Because she's got some interesting things in the pipeline. She's doing something with J Brand, and she's got some kind of cool stuff coming along. What would we like to see? What do you hope? is next
Homewares.
for her?
That's a good question. Menswear.
Menswear? Would you be a Simone Rocha boy?
I could be.
You're like, I could make that work.
Yeah.
How about
Trousers.
you? Ben? Yeah,
Yeah,
trousers.
that's
More
that's
tailoring.
That's
She's
what got me
going,
into
she's
menswear. Like to
touching,
maybe
doing
see
it. She's
something a
touching
little
on
bit more.
it.
Yeah,
She's
there was
got
some-
some suits happening.
Yeah.
I think that could be a strong point for her.
So we just want more from Simone. How about
Yes,
you, Bertie?
more please.
More
More of the same. I don't think she should diversify. I think she should
I'm
just
very
keep going.
happy with what
Yeah.
she's doing.
Aww.
Bravo, Simone.
Yeah.
Should we give her a clap to round things up?
Definitely.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you.